Okay, it's 12 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started, and we are recording. So welcome to our webinar. Um, I have a few announcements before we get into the content. So while you're waiting, please remember that you can unmute yourself if you have a question, or you can type it into the chat and we will monitor that. But I may mute you if there's any background noise, so we'll keep the microphones off. Oh, and I will turn off that chime too so that we won't hear that while we're talking. Okay. And I wanted to review the accessibility features in Zoom as well. We do have a live captioning turned on. If you would like to view the closed captions, you can click on the either the more or closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and click on show subtitle. There's also an option to view a transcript if you click on view full transcript there, and you can get into your accessibility settings. If you click on subtitle settings, there's an option to increase your closed caption size. You can always use Control and A to mute or unmute yourself, which I find is pretty useful, and Control and the plus or minus key to increase or decrease the size of the chat display. And on our next slide, we want to acknowledge our funding for this project. This is made possible in part by a Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is administered by the South Carolina State Library. Okay, so we are here to talk about the Web Accessibility Assessments project for public libraries. And I am Caroline Smith, the Inclusive Services Consultant here at the South Carolina State Library. And we're going to talk about what web accessibility is and why it's important. And then Amy Shapley is here from Able, South Carolina. She is the Director of Community Access, and she will share some details about their web assessment program and how they conduct the assessments that public libraries can receive through this project. Wendy Copeland is our grants administrator here at the South Carolina State Library, and she will share information about the application process if you'd like to receive the web assessments. And we'll also talk about what kind of additional training and support libraries can receive. I'd also like to introduce Kevin Shelton, who is our web developer here at the State Library, and he can share his expertise if needed on the more technical aspects of website development. We will also have time for Q&A, so feel free to ask questions anytime, but we'll have some time at the end reserved as well. And again, we are recording this session so we can provide that to you all as well as people who were unable to attend live today. All right, so I'd like to give a brief overview. This project is open to South Carolina public libraries to apply to receive a website assessment. And again, that's funded by the LSTA grants. And if you're not a South Carolina public library, I hope that there will still be some useful information to you. And we will also have some parts of this project that may be available to anyone, like the training that we'll offer later on. And basically, libraries will apply to receive a website assessment, and which is conducted by Able South Carolina, and they will get a thorough report on any issues related to accessibility that were found. And those tests will be conducted by a mix of people with IT backgrounds and people who have disabilities themselves and are screen reader users. So you get a really good mix of perspectives, and Amy will talk to you more about that in just a minute. We will also provide some training and consultation so that when you hear about these issues, you'll have guidance on how to fix them and make your website more accessible. And since we are still in a pandemic, all the grant and project activities will be conducted virtually, so you don't have to worry about safety precautions. So why web accessibility? Why are we focusing on this in our project? And that's basically because libraries are for everyone, and so we want our websites to be as well. And so if you do not have accessibility in your mind and are not trained on the best practices there when you're developing the website initially or later on as you're adding content and updating the website, there may be areas of your website that are not accessible to people with different types of disabilities. And that can include a range of disabilities. Some of the ones that we think about most in terms of websites are visual disabilities like blindness or a visual impairment, hearing. So if someone is deaf or hard of hearing, there may be some considerations there, as well as mobility. If you think of things like interactive elements that may move and drop down menus and things like that, that can also pose an accessibility issue. And there are also plenty of guidelines for accessibility and documentation. One that we refer to in this project is WCAG 2.0, which stands for Web Accessibility Content Guidelines. And you can find the documentation there at the website w3.org/WAI/standards-guidelines/WCAG. And we could paste that link in the chat later on if that's helpful for you. And you also would want to be aware of the legal standards that apply to your website as if you're a public library, as basically a local government entity, which would fall under Title II of the Americans with Disability Act, or ADA, that our virtual services and presence should be accessible to people with disabilities, as well as Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is specific to information and communication technology. And if you're interested in finding out more about those legal standards, you can go to section508.gov or ada.gov, and this longer link here goes to the best practices toolkit for state and local government, and talks about website accessibility under Title II of the ADA. And I also want to add that one reason I thought this project was important is because right now in the time of the pandemic, when our physical spaces still have restrictions and our patrons may be taking extra safety precautions themselves, the library's virtual presence may be their only interaction with the library right now. And so it's really more important than ever to make sure that that's accessible to everyone. And I have a few numbers here if you're curious about how many people does this apply to in South Carolina. These were estimates from the Disability and Health Data System from 2018. And they estimate that 28.1% of South Carolinians have some type of disability, and that includes 6.1% of hearing disabilities and 5.3% vision disabilities. And those numbers are from the website dhds.cdc.gov. And it's really a pretty big number, and we certainly don't want to exclude 28% or 10% or even 1% from using our library services. And so now I have a video to share with you of a real screen reader user demonstrating what this looks like and how some of those technical things that we can do in the background of our websites actually affect the use of the website by someone who is blind and using a screen reader. And I'm going to reshare my screen. You can watch this from the YouTube website, so bear with me just a moment. And this video is about 4 minutes long, but I think it's really important and helpful to see it actually in use. And please let me know if my sound does not share, but actually, it's being a little slow. Let's see.
This is Mark Sutton from the University of California, San Francisco's IT Web Services Department. Here today with a brief tour of screen reading technology. I'm a blind person who has been using screen readers, braille writers, scanning equipment, other adaptive technologies since my childhood. What a screen reader does is, for example, I'm going to start to read this page.
Navigation item. Link, University of California, San Francisco. Link, about UCSF. Link, search UCSF.
And what I will now do is slow down the speech rate.
Rate 80%, 75%, 70%, 65%, 60%, 55%, 50%, 45%, 40%. Link, UCSF Medical Center.
So as I was about to say, a screen reader converts what's on a computer screen into information that can be displayed through synthetic speech or...
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with that window.
braille
Let me
output.
Close some windows real quick and see if that comes out any better. Could you see it okay? Feel free to unmute yourself. It's trying to make it full screen, but it's
Sound
just
is coming through better than the video, but we're getting the hang of it.
okay. Let me go back just a second and see if it'll
Link,
catch up this time.
UCSF Medical Center.
So as I was about to say, a screen reader converts what's on a computer screen into information that can be displayed through synthetic speech or braille output. And it does that by allowing you to use a computer instead of a mouse, a computer keyboard instead of a mouse. You can also use a braille display as an input device.
End of navigation.
And what it does is it cleverly determines what's on the screen and presents you that information in a way that would allow for efficient navigation of these pages. So for example, I could just keep reading.
Banner 3 items. Visited, link, image, home.
Line by line, and we could be here all day. Or I could jump to the first heading on the page.
Heading level 2, search for heading level 2, you are here. Heading level 1, make videos accessible.
So as I'm moving down through the page, I can look for the category that interests me. And I'm just using commands built into the screen reader. So that's all a pretty simple description of what a screen reader is all about. Now I'm going to go over and show a few examples of how that can fall apart. So I have a couple graphics on this page.
Mark Sutton hands on a MacBook Pro image.
So the first one is well described and uses an alt tag.
You are currently on it.
To describe what that graphic is all about. Now we go to the next graphic.
Reader 042116.jpg.
Much less useful. So it's important to use those elements. It's also true for tables. So I'm going to move to a table.
FDA approved medications. Table 3 columns, 5 rows. FDA approved medications.
So the table is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm going to move into the table.
Medicine. Approved. Column 2 of 3.
And then if I go down into the table.
Medicine. Tolbutamide.
And as I move across.
Approved. 1975. Column 2 of 3.
We're getting the labels for the column headers and row headers. So it's important when programming tables, forms, and other elements on the web pages to use the proper HTML codes. I'll go to the
table 3 columns.
Second table on the page.
Medicine. Row 2 of 5 tolbutamide.
And as I'm in the table, I move across it.
Row November 1995.
I get a date, but I don't know what that date is associated with. So it's important, as I was saying, to include proper coding tags for all these elements. These are just a few highlights of a screen reader's capabilities and some of the ways in which the experience can fall short for a blind user. The life of students, faculty, staff, and visitors is largely conducted on the internet nowadays. Screen reading technologies can make many of these interactions work more smoothly. When developers pay attention to certain coding standards, blind persons are able to participate in digital communication, being able to do such things as understand calendars and schedules, enroll in or teach classes, conduct research, and many more essential activities that are conducted electronically. If developers of web pages and applications fail to take into account these design considerations, many people will be left out, unable to use these tools of daily life that are now taken for granted by most of us. The university provides a gateway to many key aspects of social participation. It's imperative that access to university offerings is not jeopardized. For more information, go to digitalaccess.ucsf.edu. Thank you.
Okay, I hope that video was a little clearer for you after I got it full screen. And we can also provide a link to this and any of the other materials that we're sharing by email. So please contact us if you would like to receive those, and I'll send some links out to everyone who is registered as well. So let me get my slides back up. I'll reshare my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see the slides again. So with that, I will turn it over to Amy to talk a little bit about the details of the web assessments.
You. So one of the services that we do provide at Able South Carolina is web testing, and one of the unique things that we do, as Caroline had mentioned, is that we pair individuals with disabilities who are users of assistive technology with IT professionals, and sometimes they're in dual roles, but we always have at least 2 reviewers. And at Able South Carolina, we are a disability rights organization, and we also provide services, and as my job title says, Director of Community Access, my job is really focused on removing barriers to access in the community for individuals with disabilities. And about 80% of our staff have a disability. To be a center for independent living, over half of your staff needs to have a disability, but we well exceed that. So even within our staff, we have some web testers who use assistive technology. And so what we'll do is we'll take a sampling of your website. So that includes these pages that are listed. So the home page, contact us form, or another type of subscription form that has fields to be filled in, because those are really important. Your events calendar, because as we saw in that video with the tables and calendars can be difficult for screen readers if they're not formatted correctly. We will also do a locations landing page or another individual page if you don't have a locations page, your about page, or another landing page that you have. We will do a document review if you have a document that is like an event flyer or something that they can print out online. We want to make sure that that's accessible as well. So if there's some sort of PDF linked in or something like that. And then we'll look at 2 additional pages of content just to make sure. So where you get the most traffic or something that you think is really important within your organization, your library, we'll look at that as well. You can go to the next slide. So we will provide a sample report, as Caroline said, but one of the things that we also do is we don't just hand you a report, and you'll actually get you'll get 2 versions of the report, because or 2 separate reports, because you'll have at least 2 web testers. And with the web reports, we also provide some technical assistance in explaining what it means. And we do look at the WCAG 0.2 or 2.0, sorry, standards, as well as the ADA. And one of the things that the ADA says is that all communication should be accessible to everyone. So we look at lots of different aspects, including something called plain language and easy reading. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that is a best practice, so we look at these standards, but we also provide best practice information. And we do that with all of our accessibility reports, whether it be an architectural assessment or a web assessment or policy assessment. What we're looking for is that there are no barriers to anyone to be able to utilize your building, your website, or navigate your programs, but also we want to make sure that we don't just meet the minimum law or rule of law, but that we provide you with best practices that you can use as well. And so we'll look at things like, is it understandable? So you'll see here, there's not actually an issue on this, except that it's not the best practice. So it's saying, it has a tag, but it's not a very descriptive tag. So the suggestion is to make it a more descriptive tag. And did you want to open the link to the example, or do we just want to share that there's an example?
Sure, I could open the link and share a little bit of example. And let me just reshare my screen again. So this is one of the examples. Are there any particular spots you want to highlight, Amy?
If you just go down to like page 4, I think it is, or 5. I guess it's 5. Sorry.
Let's see.
So you'll see here on this page, if you can see, it has, it's on the home page and it's showing all of the examples of things that might be wrong. And so there are lots of little boxes that show up when we do a web test. And so it can be anything from color contrast to, for those who are visually impaired or colorblind, and to also be something like we're missing a heading or alt text. And so you'll get photos of where in your website these things are occurring, as well as a description of that, and then an example of how to remediate or to fix that issue. And so if you do a web test, they're a lot of fun, but you get lots of little icons pop up. So we explain what all of those icons are and what you'll need to do. And again, we look at, if you have a video, is it captioned? Is there translation? We look at the language that's used to see if it's understandable. And then we make sure that a screen reader is able to process the information on each page that we review.
Okay, so you should be seeing our slides again. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we move into the application process, Amy?
Well, we have been talking about doing an overall training for folks just to give you some easy to use skills to check for accessibility. But again, just know that if you are awarded one of the reviews and reports, you'll also receive some technical assistance around the explanation of that and suggestions on how to improve and fix that. So we don't just hand you a report and walk away. We give a lot of guidance with that as well.
Great. And the training, the kind of 1-hour training session, that will be open for anyone to register on our calendar of events website, although we especially want the libraries that receive these reports to attend so that they understand, what we're talking about when we say this image needs alt text and things like that. But that will be one thing that will be a little more open to everyone. All right, thank you, Amy. I will now turn it over to Wendy to talk a little bit about our application process, and I will see if I can go ahead and paste that or attach that application to the chat if you would like to follow along that way too.
All right, thank you. I'm Wendy Copeland, the Grants Administrator at the South Carolina State Library, and we just wanted to talk a little bit about the application process. So the application, as Caroline said earlier, it's a grant of service. It is not a typical application where you're not receiving any grant funds. So you're not getting any money, but you are receiving services. And the actual grant, the grant application is due on April 1st. 2021, and it needs to be actually turned in to me at my email, which is wcoplen@statelibrary.sc.gov. because people can't turn them in the mail right now with the pandemic. So we usually have them turn in by email anyways. If anyone has questions on the turn-in process or anything with that, they can contact me at that email also. You can also reach me by telephone, which is 803-734-0436. We also have opportunity to answer and ask questions here too. We have one-on-one assistance that is available during the application process. So if you're unsure of what some of the questions are, we can go over them. And I don't think we've mentioned this earlier, but we are intending to apply or award 4 different libraries will be selected for this grant process. Recipients will be notified on April 15th if they're going to receive the award, and all the assessments should be completed by June 1st, 2021. That's just kind of the time frame of the application. Caroline, did you want to actually go through the application a little bit too, or not? I don't want to take up everyone's time.
I think it might be helpful to at least take a look at it
All
and
right.
see. To anyone who is attending have questions about the application or anything in particular that you would like to see? If so, let us know. But I will also have people watching the recording, so that's one reason I think it'd be helpful just to take a look at it.
Can everyone see my screen?
Mhm. Yep.
All right. So within the application, it is just a Word file that has been, has some of the instructions, some of the things that we've already gone over earlier, where the funding source is. This comes from IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, administered by South Carolina State Library. It also talks about the items that Amy mentioned earlier, the homepage, and the different things that the screen reader will look at and the people will look at. So it lists all the pages of what will be reviewed. We talk about the standards again and the deadlines and dates. The items, like I said, are due on April 1st. We hope to have everything completed by June 1st. Within the application, it talks kind of about the reasons and the goals why we're doing this, and some of the requirements. We talked earlier about how we're going to have training, and so we want people to be able to come to the training and learn more. Even if you're not getting a grant, you can come to the training. We don't have that scheduled yet, otherwise I would include that in here. And let's see. There's also going to be a report required at the end of the project. So to see what you have been able to update or revise based on some of those standards. But when you actually look at the application, we hope it's very simple, but sometimes grant applications can be a little confusing. It's just basic things like who is the library that's applying, who's going to be the project manager, and how can we contact them. There's also a few certifications that are things that are required. Does your library director know that you're applying for this? And yes, you're going to come to the training and you do want to participate in this project and you will turn in a report. It's just some housekeeping things. But I'm not sure what actual page I'm on, I'm sorry, but this is the main part of the project where you provide the library's website address and who maintains your library website. That's a very good question sometimes because some libraries do not have IT people to do it themselves. They have to outsource it, or some libraries have counties IT people who do it for them. So if someone else is in charge of the website, we'd like to know. That way we can communicate with them also. And that leads us to question number 3. Does the library have full control of changes that are made to the website? Please describe any restrictions such as a county or municipal control of the website. I got a little bit ahead of myself there, sorry. Are you aware of any existing accessibility issues on your website, or have you received any complaints or requests that you were unable to resolve from patrons or staff? Please list below. That's question number 4. So you might know that you have some problems, and that helps that you're aware of them, and then we'll help you figure them out a little bit more. Number 5, are there plans to redesign the website within the next 5 years? If so, please briefly describe. So you might be going through a major revision, and we'd like to know that too. Number 6, how do you anticipate addressing the accessibility issues that are discovered in this assessment? Because this is a grant for the services provided in the assessment, there is not any money being funded to actually improve your website. So we want to make that clear up front, that we will help provide you with the training and suggested solutions and or best management practices, but we're not requiring that everything be corrected within a specific time frame, but we want to encourage you to make the improvements, and we'll help you along that way. All right, and then number 7 is the last question. And what does the library hope to achieve through participating in this project? And the director usually has this, will sign it to say that they certify that they understand that you're entering into a request for funds, which is what the application process is. If you receive the application, once we receive the application, we review everything, and then after that, we'll make the award determination of those who are selected for receiving this project. And I'm sorry if I sometimes talk fast. I do try to slow down, but did we have any questions? I wasn't sure if there was any in the chat or specific on the application.
I haven't seen any questions yet in the chat, but please type them in now if you have any. Or feel free to unmute yourself too. And Wendy and I are both available if you have questions, if you do decide to apply for this project. I'm also available if you have general accessibility questions, but are not applying for this project. And let's see.
The only other thing I was also going to add is, as you're working on the application and you have questions, or if you want someone to review your draft application, we also are available for that. If you have questions on that, we'll do draft reviews.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. We'll keep an eye out if any questions come in. And the last thing I wanted to mention to all of you is the training and consultation element of this project. So we will have a 1-hour virtual training session that's scheduled, and I believe that will be later spring after we've had time to review the applicants and see who's actually participating. But we will be sure to announce that and give you time to register. And that will cover general web accessibility, and that will again be led by Able South Carolina. So that will not be specific to your library's website and what issues were found, but the general issues, which are really important to understand if you're going to resolve the specific things. And then that training will be open to anyone to register. It says all public libraries, but if you are not in a public library, but in an academic library or another organization that this pertains to, you're welcome to register as well. We will also do individual consultations with you to review the results of your report and make sure that those results are understandable and you can work on a plan of how to resolve the issues that were discovered. So with that, are there any questions? And our contact information is here on the screen. My email address is jcsmith@statelibrary.sc.gov. And Wendy is WCOPLEN@statelibrary.sc.gov. So reach out to Wendy if you have questions about the application process or the grant side of things. You can reach out to me if you have a question about website accessibility. And I've also included a link that I pasted in the chat there for the project webpage that has the applications, the sample reports. I'll add a recording of this session later, and so that's kind of your one place to go for all that information. And thank you for joining us today. I'm going to close out my slides and we'll stick around for just a minute more in case you do have questions. And please share this with other people at your library if you're interested in improving your library's accessibility. All right, thank you all for attending. I'm going to stop recording now. I don't believe we have any questions.